It's DD on the spot.
One. Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Nick Padovani on the show coming to us. He is a member of many bands. We have Kossuth, Equipoise, and Virulent Depravity. A lot of rough names to come up with, but we got through it. He's also a guitarist. Nick, thank you so much for being on the show.
Problem, man. I appreciate you reaching out to me. It's actually unexpected. I didn't think anybody would be reaching out to me for a podcast. So it was pretty cool, but appreciate it.
Absolutely. More than happy to do it. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what got you into music and what your influences were?
Well, let's see. When I was, I want to say 11 years old, I was really into Blink-182, Yellow Card, all that poppy, pop punk, if you will. And I don't know. I really wanted to play guitar after watching a bunch of music videos with Blink-182. So I got a guitar. My aunt had one when I was living out in Florida at one point. I played it, as in I literally just, hit the strings a bunch, and it was nonsense. But, I started looking up tabs, and I started learning. So I never actually formally learned how to, read music or anything like that. I just kind of did everything by ear. And I could have taken it a lot more seriously at this point, but, fast forward some 14, 15 years later, and a lot of different interests in music, and here we are.
Yeah. So what was the biggest struggle for you starting out learning the guitar? Because it can be hard for some people. What was the hardest thing for you?
Well, like I said, since I didn't ever have any formal theory knowledge, it was just kind of a lot of, understanding tablature. I don't know if you play guitar or anything like that. Reading tabs, I didn't really understand it at first, but I kind of picked it up eventually. And then, to this day, I still struggle with, just certain practices on the guitar that I should be, more keen on, such as, proper fretting technique or picking technique, just a lot of stuff that a lot of guitarists actually overlook despite having 5 to 10 years of experience. It's just those kind of things that you sort of neglect when you're starting out, and then you realize, oh, whatever, I can just, I can put it off, and it's a bad habit to get into.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what was the first band that you were in?
First band I was in high school, I don't even know if I'd call it a band. I don't even remember if we had a name. I think it was My Fears Become Phobias, which I think was a Blood Runs Black song.
Yeah.
And we didn't ever actually do anything, but we just screwed around in their garage, and it was very short-lived. Then there was a band in Pittsburgh I played locally. Fun fact, that was the only time I ever actually played any shows. I've yet to play any shows with these 3 bands. So it was a band called Vitandis. It was like black death metal. I played bass for them. I did not play bass. It was kind of like, just playing guitar without playing chords. It was a fun experience. It was cool to hang out with the people. The music was good, but it wasn't what I really wanted to play necessarily. So my heart wasn't into it that much. But yeah, that was pretty much my foray into music.
So what to you makes a guitarist distinguishable from other members in the band? Is there a certain characteristic that a guitarist needs to have in order to be, a guitarist?
Versus like a bassist or a drummer?
Yeah.
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I think every musician, no matter who they are in the band, should just be creative. And I guess it kind of depends on each person's role. Before I started writing for Equipoise, I never actually realized how sometimes, I don't want to say easy, but how a drummer could sit there and compose guitarist parts, or guitarist could compose drummer's parts. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And then I, started playing with certain softwares like Guitar Pro and Superior Drummer, and I realized I was like, oh, cool, I can write drum beats, maybe not as well as a drummer could, but, with that, I think all that matters is that if you are a member of a band, depending on your designated role, maybe you're not meant to contribute songwriting-wise, but if you are, it's important that you have that creativity about you. So even if you're the drummer, you're contributing, make sure it's a good contribution and not just nonsense, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your inspiration behind becoming a songwriter? Had you always wanted to write music, or was it just a sudden urge that you had?
You know, I just kind of liked playing guitar, honestly, before that, but never really took it serious. And then I was just listening to a lot of different stuff back in 2015, 2014. There was a lot of really good bands coming out. And for whatever reason, I downloaded Guitar Pro. I don't know if you're familiar with the software.
Yep.
And I started playing around in it, and then, you know, I started writing some music with my ex-guitarist, Zach, who's a very good friend of mine. We were screwing around in the summer of 2015, and I was writing stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, this sounds pretty cool. So I started playing around with it in Guitar Pro, and you know, I started writing drums to it. It was my first time ever playing with, you know, drum tablature or time signatures. I didn't know how time signatures worked or tempos or any of that. It was just all new to me. And you know, I pieced it all together instead of just hearing drum beats going on in my head as I write. It was cool to, you know, finally hear actual percussive elements go alongside what I wrote, and bass lines and everything. I was like, wow, like, you know, this is pretty cool. I actually feel good about this. And I just did that, and in a matter of 2 months, I wrote 8 songs and like 40 minutes worth of material. And I think all but one song made it to our full-length album. And I don't know, something from there, man, I was just like, I can't believe how fluid this is for me. I mean, I know a lot of people that seem to struggle with songwriting, and I don't consider myself the greatest guitar player. I know so many people who are far better than me, but I do, you know, feel very confident in my songwriting capabilities. And I realized, I was like, you know, man, I think I finally, you know, found my calling. It's just songwriting just comes to me like that. So with that, I kind of unlocked the passion and maybe realized, like, wow, you know, this is something that I really need to stick to. So that's kind of how it played out.
Yeah. Are there any certain themes that you like to explore, or do you like to explore a vast variety?
Themes in what regard?
Like your lyrics, or sort of the way that you play?
I don't personally write lyrics.
Oh, okay.
As far as playing, no, I mean, you know, a lot of the way I write is based on what I'm into at the time. And I kind of almost draw unapologetically similar influences from other bands. You know, I make it my own eventually, but it definitely certain riffing patterns and this and that, you know. When I started writing my album, I could almost in each song pick out what section of a song would, you know, was inspired by another band. And, you know, thankfully, after 3 years of modifying it, it has its own personality for sure. But that's something I always try to stress upon, if I may. A lot of people I know that are songwriters or aspiring songwriters, they struggle to really kind of push themselves. And for me, I find the biggest thing that helped me, at least, was just writing a song from left to right, not worrying about what sounds like another song or if it's a ripoff, or, you know, just write whatever sounds good to you and worry about all the kinks in the end. And I feel like that's the most productive way to write, because a lot of people will sit there chasing their tail for, you know, months and years, just, you know, working on the same 5 songs when they could have just busted out 5 less than amazing songs in a month and then fine tune them from there. I just feel like, you know, I'm not one to say necessarily that's the right or wrong way to do it, but for me, I found that's a very effective way of writing music.
What is your favorite guitar riff of all time?
Oh my god, I was not prepared for that. My favorite guitar riff of all time. Oh man, that is, I honestly, okay. How about we just narrow it down and we'll say it's something from Death. How about Trapped in a Corner by Death?
Oh, yeah.
One of the riffs off of that, I don't think of which one it is right now, but I love that song. So let's just say something from there.
I would have to probably say Pink Floyd's "Comfortably Numb," just because it's just
That's a good song, yes.
it's so good. But when you were starting out in music, did you find it hard for the bands that you were in to sort of identify yourself genre-wise? Did you guys always have a certain genre in mind that you wanted to play, or was there always a discussion?
No, I mean, I knew pretty much off the bat like what kind of sound I was going for. I had a very specific list of bands in mind that I don't want to say I wanted to sound like, but I wanted to. Okay, sure. Wanted to sound similar to. I didn't want people to be like, oh, hey, they're ripping off this band. I want them to think, oh, hey, this reminds me of that band. And then I'm hoping, maybe sometime down the line, people can start saying, oh, hey, this band reminds me of Equipoise. That'd be my end goal, is to be one of those influencers or one of those people that, people want to refer to rather than just, my band being referred to another. Maybe it's an ego thing, I don't know, but are you familiar with the band Vervum?
Yeah.
So, Vervum, I think of, is a great example. They've been around for quite a while, but, their full length came out in 2016. In just a matter of less than 2 years, I've heard so many people refer to bands being influenced by Vervum. Have an album out in 2 years and then, be considered that influential is something I would aspire for. Our album's coming out February 2019, more or less, is the projected date. I would hope maybe 2 years from now we start seeing, oh, sounds like Equipoise or blah, blah, blah. To me, that'd be considered doing things right.
Mm-hmm. Is there a name, or is there a reason behind the name Equipoise? Is there a story behind it, or did you just think it was a really cool name?
So my friend Avanti, he's a fan of, I don't know if you know the anime Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, yep.
I've always made fun of anime for the longest time, but vocalist Stevie, he was, we're kind of trying to come up with concepts for our album, and he was pitching anime to me. I was like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. So I finally checked it out. I was like, okay, I'm eating my words. It's really good. I really enjoyed this. I watched the whole series in like a week or something. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to my friend who also liked Full Metal Alchemist, and I was like, hey, man, maybe you can help me think of some band names here, because I have no clue. I'm not good at titles or anything like that. That's just not my forte. So he, kind of found a bunch of words that were related to it, and he came up with the word equipoise, which meant a state of equilibrium. And I thought that was a really cool concept, because it kind of plays upon the whole core theme of the show, which was that humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost. So I thought that kind of really played hand in hand with the whole theme. Basically, in our world, everything is very give or take, and nobody can get anything without giving something in return, whether they realize it or not. You can't just go through life expecting things without giving something back in some fashion, and you might not always know what that is. It might be something you give away subconsciously without any thought, but no matter what, we're giving something away. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really cool concept.
Yeah. So what was the first song that you guys came up with as a band? I love to hear first song stories.
First song we came up with as a band. Well, I do all the songwriting, mm-hmm. but Zach and I, when we jammed in the summer, the first song that I came up with, which was when him and I were jamming, is not released yet. And that will be released. But the second song we did is the fourth track off of our EP, and it's called Sigil Insidious. And then the third song I started writing with him a little bit, but we didn't get to jam that much after, so then I ended up doing it on my own, and that was called A Suit of My Flesh, which is the second song off of our EP. So, yeah. A lot of it I just kind of do on my own.
Yeah. So what to you makes a song good in your opinion? Is there a certain style that it has to go through? Is there a certain way the guitar goes? Is there a certain melody? Or to you, can a song just be good just depending on just how it sounds?
Is this me as a writer or me as a listener?
I could do both, yeah.
Well, me as a listener, I like something that's catchy. I I don't have any need for unnecessarily technical or oh, this has like 5416 time signatures or whatever. It doesn't interest me at all. It's just it's overindulgent in my opinion. I don't know if other people feel the same way. They probably don't, but whatever. That's just how I feel. For me as a writer, it's kind of the same deal. I like almost adhering to I like a lot of pop actually.
Mm-hmm.
I always get shit for this, but I like Justin Bieber. That's not like the norm for metalheads, but I think he's at least. I've only heard his newest album, but maybe he has another one out at this point. I don't know, but the one I heard was really good. It's just like a R&B album, and pop structures are catchy.
Mm-hmm.
People like pop because it's catchy. And I was like, okay, well, I want to write catchy music, so I like to oftentimes adhere to like I have a riff that will repeat 2 or 3 times throughout a song. It's usually like intro, verse, chorus, solo section, blah, blah, blah. I'm not afraid to repeat riffs. And especially in our genre, a lot of people seem to be afraid to do that. I don't know why. I don't understand the fear of catchy music. I also like a lot of grooves, too. Something that makes your foot tap or move your head. I just like music that kind of makes your body move,
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. It's definitely all about getting the audience involved. And when you're coming up with the song and the songwriting process, like you said, you come up with a lot of it, but do you like to get input from your band members before you release it, or before you kind of like run it through them, or are you kind of just saying like to the band, hey, I got a song, let's just give it a listen ahead of time?
Oh yeah, I always show everything. Like I show a lot of stuff to my vocalist Stevie all the time. Like with the other guys, I try to not pester them as much since we're all online. Like I don't shoot them a message like, oh hey, I just updated this riff. Mm-hmm. But Stevie pretty much seems to like pretty much everything I've written so far. I don't think I've heard him be like, oh no, I don't like this part more than maybe once or twice. So at least with him, it's nice because like I'll send him something and I almost know every time it's like, oh dude, that's sick, and then it's like, oh cool, thanks man. And the other guys are usually pretty cool about it. So I don't get a lot of resistance from them, thankfully. I guess it makes it a little easier. Yeah. Honestly, I'll share stuff with friends more often than not, especially friends that I feel like might be a little more critical. Mm-hmm. Those are the people that I really look for the feedback from, because a lot of people are afraid to kind of tell you, something's not right. I used to be the same way, but then I was like, man, I hate that I can't get feedback from people ever. Like, either people are just being yes men to me or they actually like what I'm doing, but I need some sort of criticism. So I'll reach out to people that I know are going to give me that criticism I need, and I incorporate it into my music, and 10 to 1 it makes it better. Colin, my friend Colin in Virulent Depravity, he's a great example of somebody who will be perfectly just straight up blunt and honest with me about whatever he doesn't like in a song. I fix it, and then every time I fix it, it's way better. Mm-hmm. So I'm appreciative of that kind of feedback.
So when you're in 3 bands, first of all, how do you manage that? It's enough just being in one band as it is. Have you found it to be a struggle, and what are some techniques that you use in order to, cope with that?
Less sleep. No, so it's basically a big juggling act, more or less. It's kind of, the process is focused around offsetting everybody's schedule. Kind of works in my favor sometimes, other times it really doesn't. So when I was doing my Equipoise album, which was taking place, I don't know, most of January till maybe April, so a solid 4 months I was just booked doing my own thing. And so I let the Kossuth guys know, I said, listen, I can't devote any time to this right now. I need to focus on this. Same with Colin, but Colin, was coming off of just finishing his previous album, so he was taking a little breather. Now we're getting back into it a little bit. So like right now my focus is working on the Kossuth album, and then in the meanwhile I'm working concurrently on the Virulent Depravity album. But Colin is the main writer for that, so it makes it a little easier because since he's the main writer, I don't have to contribute as much in the moment. And then with Kossuth, I do have a little more of a contribution, it seems, so I do have more of that focus, which makes it easier for me to kind of balance the two. Unfortunately, I have my second album I'm working on for Equipoise, but I'm just kind of getting to that as time permits. But I did manage to get a couple songs written for that already. So, at this point, I'm like, whatever. I have a few songs written, so I'm good to go.
What would you say is the number one ideal thing that you look for in band members of all three of your bands?
Above all else is charisma.
Mm-hmm.
I place so much importance in a band being just not only sociable, but just having a very friendly aura about them. I have no patience for people that are elitist. Mm-hmm. I don't like rude musicians. It happens a lot in the scene. I want every musician I work with that's just very friendly and outgoing. I'm not expecting them to be a social media butterfly, but I would really like for these people to just be friendly and understand that interacting with a fan is just such an easy thing to do. Absolutely. And it takes literally zero effort. And I pride myself on always being friendly to every fan I can when I can. I mean, I'm insanely busy these days, so I can't really get back to people as much as I'd like, but I pride myself on always making sure I'm friendly to the fans, and I hate even calling them fans. I call them friends because I befriend them and I want them to be friendly with me. I want them to feel comfortable with me because I think it's far more important to build a relationship and a strong network than it is to build, disconnected fans. If you build that relationship, then the fan base will come. You got to think of, the 10 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a friend of a friend.
Mm-hmm.
If you can become really good friends with a bunch of people, and psychology states that they're going to take an interest in what you're doing. If they happen to like the music you're playing, and they're good friends with you, they're going to support the shit out of you, and they're going to want to push your music out to their friends, and then their friend is going to keep pushing out. It's an evolving circle. I think it's so much stronger to work on building that up than it is to, randomly invite people to like your band page, which, don't even get me started, that's the worst practice ever. It's just terrible. Or, just tagging 100 people in music posts.
Oh, that is the worst. That is my...
You can't, there's no circumventing the effective ways of promoting your band.
Absolutely.
And the number one rule I have for myself too is if I'm doing this, I need to be genuine about it. I can't be befriending people with the intent of them being my fans. I'm not looking to get anything from them outside of friendship. And then if we happen to be friends and they happen to like my music, then cool. Mm-hmm. That's just how I like to do it. And as long as I'm working with people that have that mentality, which absolutely, as it stands, wonderful people I'm working with, we're good to go. No problems. Musicianship comes second. And creativity, they're just for the fact that I do most of the songwriting.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I really appreciate you saying that with all the band invites, because really, let's face it, it gets so annoying after a while, and you just want to delete everything. But when you were talking about you performed live for one show, what was that experience like for you?
Oh, sorry, it wasn't one show. It was a few shows.
Oh, okay.
Pretty underwhelming. I mean, I was nervous for sure. I've never performed live at that point, so I was just I was completely new to it. But yeah, I was definitely nervous the whole time. I didn't have a lot of stage presence. I was pretty much so focused on playing, and I don't even know if it was like I was nervous because I was going to mess up or nervous because I just didn't want to make an ass of myself while I was playing. Like I didn't want to be too animated or anything. But I think now I don't have anything to go off of as of late, but I think as it stands, I'd have far less problems, that kind of nervousness. I think I'd really enjoy doing what I was doing just because I was a lot more passionate about this versus what I was doing then.
Mm-hmm. So what are your future plans? I mean, I know you said you're working on a second album. Do you guys, I've always been interesting, when you're coming up with the names for your songs, a lot of bands, I asked a lot of bands this question, it's usually half and half, and the first half is they take the lyrics from the existing songs and they figure out a song title based off of that, or they already have a song title in name before they do anything. What is your guys' process like for Equipoise?
So for Stevie, since he handles that, I know he usually will come up with the titles after the lyrics. A lot of times he doesn't actually have the song title within the lyrics because, like a lot of bands will do that. I don't know where he comes up with them, honestly. He's got a good knack for it, but beats me. I'm not the word guy, unfortunately.
Yeah. So when you guys are doing your thing, when you guys are in the studio or recording, is there any specific techniques that you guys like to use in order to sort of maximize your sound? Or would you guys describe yourself as having a specific sound that's unique to yourself?
Per person or just as far as the whole?
As a band, I'd say.
No, I don't think there's anything. Genre to we've included a bunch of symphonic stuff in our new album, which is definitely coming up, but it's not. I don't think a lot of tech death bands have started doing it yet to where it's like saturated. Do you like Fallujah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I call a lot of bands these days Fallujah core, not to be an insult because I like Fallujah, but just more, that whole like very atmospheric, like you were saying before with Pink Floyd, kind of like that very ambient atmospheric sort of vibe. A lot of bands are starting to adapt that sound now, and it's almost becoming the norm. Now, what I think symphonic tech death is going to be the next thing. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next, but I have a feeling it's really starting to come around, especially a lot of the bands on our label, Artisan Era, like Inferi and Mordant Rapture, both incredible bands. They utilize symphonic elements very tastefully, and I don't think I've done it as tastefully as them, but I definitely incorporated it a lot. And other than that, don't think of us as being anything crazy. I do flamenco guitar or classical or nylon or whatever you want to call it. Other than that, it's pretty standard fare tech death.
If you could have any guitar on the planet, what would you want?
I have it. I just like my custom Kossuth guitars. I'm not after any particular Stratocaster or anything like that. If it looks nice and it plays nice, I'm happy.
What makes your custom guitar different from other guitars?
I got to spec it out how I wanted to.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was wondering if they put on any extra things onto it, or if they did anything. Is it just a design, basically?
Yeah, 1 second, I have it.
Oh, okay.
It's nice. It's headless, for what it's worth. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's Kiesel Vader, 7
wow.
string. And I don't know if you can see, but the fretboard's blue too.
Ooh. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then it's strung through here, and then it's a cool design, but it's light as a feather.
Yeah.
Do
you find that makes it easier, the weight, or is that sometimes make it a hindrance when you kind of don't know how heavy it is?
Oh, no, I love this thing. I could not ever go back to a guitar with a head after that, I'm not going to lie. I love it way too much.
So now we go to our audience favorite part of the segment, the questionnaire part, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and we're kind of going to get your response off of it, and then from the answers, I'll kind of add them up and see if we have any similar answers to all the other questionnaires I've done. So for your first question, out of all the songs in the history of music, if you could have come up with any song personally yourself, what would it be?
How about Subdivisions by Rush?
Good choice.
I love that song.
Good choice.
It's one of my favorite songs ever.
We get a lot of Rush songs on here. Rush, obviously one of the great ones. So now for our second question, out of all the artists that have ever lived, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can pick either one. If you could perform live on stage with any artist or band for one show, who would it be?
Alan Holdsworth.
Alan Holdsworth. Oh wow, that's definitely one that we don't hear. Is there a specific reason?
Because that man is a fucking freak. It's the only reason I have. That man is insane. It's a shame he died last year, but
yeah, that's enough of a reason for me. So for our third question, out of all the venues on the planet, if you had your pick at performing at any venue on the planet, where would you go?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not very well versed when it comes to the big venues out there, so I can't really give you an answer to that. I wish I could.
All right. All right, yeah, that's no problem. But now we'll go to the real. Well, you kind of already answered it. But what is a specific guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that most people would never guess?
Yeah, it was "Love Yourself" by Justin Bieber. That
Oh
song
yeah.
is insanely catchy. I think I recorded it at one point.
Oh yeah. Have you ever thought about doing covers of Justin Bieber with your music?
My sister's a very good singer, and I told her I wanted to do a cover of it. I don't know what happened. We just never ended up doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So now, for finally though, what is a guilty pleasure genre that you enjoy other than pop? Because pop is kind of just the classical answer. Do you have any other guilty pleasure genres?
I'm pretty on the surface with my taste. So, guilty pleasure. I mean, the Justin Bieber thing isn't a guilty pleasure. I really can't say there's anything that I feel guilty about. Like, I mean, I guess EDM, but not that. I'll scream whatever I listen to from the rooftops.
Absolutely. So, where can people find your music for all these bands? I mean, for Kossuth, let's just go into that for real quickly. So, you guys are still working on recording songs, is that right?
So we have an EP out. I wasn't a part of it. There is an EP out. So, all these, your best bet for all these is going to be Bandcamp. I believe Virulent Depravity has something on Apple Music, and then I know we have something on Spotify. Our whole album is actually on there. I don't know where else, but Bandcamp for sure for all three of the bands.
Well, I'll leave links down below for all those. But let's talk a little bit about Virulent Depravity because we haven't touched that yet. How did that project get started?
I don't know how much background I can give on that just for lack of familiarity, but I want to say that Colin just, he's been writing music for a long time, and he's very interested in jazz, and I think he just kind of wanted to do like a death metal band that had a heavy influence from jazz, and like the new album we're working on is straight up just a hybrid of jazz and death metal. It's some of the coolest stuff I've ever heard. That's as far as I know how it came about. He's a phenomenal writer. He's one of the most genius composers I know personally, I would say.
Do you take inspiration from when you're writing songs for Equipoise? Do you take inspiration from the other bands that you're in, like Virulent Depravity? Do you take inspiration from what they're able to come up with and sort of try to use that same type of themes or that same type of sort of songwriting into your other bands?
It's funny you say that because I kind of did a lot of these multiple band joinings with that intent of this sort of symbiotic relationship between, what I could take from this band. Every project I'm involved in, I always try to go with the mindset, like, what can I learn from this? Thus far, I can't really say I've done that, just because Virulent Depravity, the songwriting is like out of my league, I'd say, compositionally. It's just very, Colin and I write very differently, but when we write together, it works together very well. And for Kossuth, actually, just the one song I had worked on alone, which I would say is kind of different from a lot of their other songs, I found myself adapting certain sort of patterns from that song into a lot of my songwriting. So, I mean, that's something. For just one song, I mean, that's why music's cool to me, because, I take one song, one little tidbit, and then it somehow has such a massive effect on everything.
Absolutely. And I like to ask these two final questions before we wrap it up here. I ask these to every guest. If someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, like, hey, I really want to become a musician, I really want to, start getting into the music scene, what would be your best piece of advice for that person in order for them to be successful and just enjoy what they're doing?
First and foremost, be humble. Mm-hmm. Second, be the nicest person you can be.
Yep.
3, listen to a shit ton of music that you like. Whatever you want to play, just listen to a ton of it. And start ripping it off. Do not be afraid. Do not worry what anybody says. Do not have doubts. Do not worry about self-doubt. Just literally rip off whatever. Take what you can from every band you listen to. If you can listen to 100 bands, you can take one thing from each band and start, creating a culmination of that into your own style of writing, then you're a successful composer as far as I'm concerned. Once you get over that hurdle of starting out, taking from other bands, you start to realize that you don't need them as a crutch anymore, and you really find your own style. You just got to get past that first bit of self-doubt and I don't know. For some reason, I didn't have any self-doubt when I started writing. I had zero shame. I don't know why. I'm glad I didn't. I probably should have, but I'm glad I didn't because it didn't hold me up at all.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, if you could talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give him?
Nick, don't start eating a bunch of food, you fat bastard. That's about it.
Oh, God, that is great.
Oh, and practice more.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the big ones that we get. And also, I like to kind of ask this too. What would you say is the biggest misconception that people, non-musicians, have about guitarists in a band?
That they're dumb, probably.
Yeah, there's something around that. We usually get like the drummers are kind of a little wacky, or the guitarists, are a little not too bright. But yeah, I mean, it's. I love sort of breaking that because it's so hard playing music, and people just don't understand the struggle that there is. And I mean, with you doing 3 bands, it's just so amazing to me that you're able to do that. Do you ever have, like, are you ever able to separate your life and have downtime from music, or are you just music 24/7?
No, music's fine. Well, I got into day trading a lot over the past half a year. My friend got me into cryptocurrency, and from there, I just started learning a lot about it. So I think in the past, like, half a year, I've probably spent, I'd say, about 1,000 hours just, like, practicing trading and learning about it. And
wow,
so that's the extent of my life is music and that. But I see it as a means to an end. I'm looking for a way out. Right now I'm a mechanical engineer, and it's a great job and all, but it kind of hinders me from touring and doing what I want to do. And I see trading as a way to literally wake up and sit there and trade for 20 minutes and have the rest of the day to myself to practice guitar, or we take it on the road and tour if I want to. And I'm not saying I want to drop my job or anything. I really like my job, but I like the idea of amassing extra income and just having that freedom potentially down the line.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And again, everyone, Nick Padovani, we really appreciate having you on. We love talking music to you. Go follow all of his bands. I'll have all the links down below to their Facebook and to all the other sites that you can find them at. And if you need anything promotion-wise for the podcast, just let us know when you guys are releasing that new album for Equipoise. Just let me know. And then for anything like with Kossuth, if you're releasing anything, I'd love to promote it. And do you have any upcoming shows that you're playing with any of these bands?
No, I'm really trying hard to plan a tour for Equipoise in the next year or so. Got to see how that goes.
Is there a specific area that or do you just want to do it sort of in your area, or do you want to go statewise?
I want to go to Quebec for sure.
Yes.
I love the Canadians. I love their music.
Yes.
I want to eat poutine every day. And
you speak French at all?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I took French for 4 years, but retained literally none of it because I'm not a very good student.
Yeah.
But I want to tour the eastern part of Canada, and then I kind of want to tour the East Coast. So I'm thinking maybe start out like a 2-week run, nothing crazy, but just something to kind of get my feet wet, and then from there, I'm not opposed to touring the whole Midwest and the West, Europe, wherever we have an audience, and
you'll go. Absolutely.
Wherever we can go.
Absolutely. And I mean, we wish you nothing but the best. And if you have anything on the tour, I'll love to plug and promote it. And again, you guys, Nick, we cannot thank you enough for being on the show. Do you want to give any other bands or any people shout outs before we wrap it up here?
The whole Artisan Era.
Uh-huh.
That's the label that Equipoise and Virulent Depravity are on. Mm-hmm. I adore that label more than anything. Malcolm and Mike are the 2 label heads. They are hands down some of the greatest, most hardworking dudes I know, and they're just wonderful people, and they sacrificed a lot to put together what I consider to be one of the strongest labels in tech death, if not the strongest. It has bands like Inanimate Existence, In Full Darkness, Oubliette, Mordant Rapture, Aetherius, Virulent Depravity, Equipoise. It's just filled to the brim with talent. I'm probably forgetting some right now. I hope I'm not. But there's just too much talent in one label, and I'm so appreciative of being a part of it, not just one band, but 2 bands. And I implore anybody that's into not only just tech death, but death metal alone to check out that label because they can find so many good bands in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I will leave links down below to that as well. I mean, we love supporting the scene. And again, Nick, it was really, really great having you on the show. And we wish you nothing but the best. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.